Hello, 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 hello. This is Elpy, and we are in the theElpyDimension worm farm. All right, so this is the European Nightcrawler bin. And we're going to harvest this today. Today is Tuesday, September 10th. And the last time we were in here and fed was August 30th. Now, that's 11 days. And I said that I want to be sticking between 7 and 10 days, closer to 7. So we went a little too far. Yesterday I did record, but I haven't published the red wiggler bin, which I'm changing the name to mixed worm bin number 3, because probably all these bins are actually mixed worms. Excuse me. But anyways, this is still the European Nightcrawler bin. European Nightcrawler bin. And this material, I've said before, but in case you haven't heard, this material I harvested probably a couple months ago now. And it is muddy. It is way wetter than I would like for it to be in terms of finished castings. And I only see a couple of worms. This, by the way, is another one of the populations. This in the red wiggler bin, which is now called mixed worm bin number 3, looks like their populations started over. Like a month ago, I didn't see as many worms as I was used to, and the worms I was seeing were really small. So for some reason, the adults died off. But in the last at least couple of months, I have been way more hands-on than I have in the last year and a half. And yeah, so that being said, okay, so I was saying that I harvested this side, and I put, I mixed torn up paper with grass clippings, fresh grass clippings. And it was probably a month before I got back to talking about harvesting this side. No, it was more than that. But basically, when I harvested this side, it was way more than that. I said, oh my God, normally then it turns into free-for-all. I can mix everybody together. But that side was looking more ready than not. So I've not mixed them together because I've said I should harvest. Only trick is that since I've added new material here that was wet, because I do want to encourage breeding, it made the castings wetter. So there's that. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to put it in the bucket and it's going to dry out. I'm not going to use it right away. In fact, the bucket I have that I added when I harvested from the red wiggler, now mixed worm bin number 3, there was a little bit of castings still left then. And actually here's some paper, because there was a bunch of mites on that paper, and I said I'm going to take it outside, and meant to put it in the compost, but I didn't. So these have been left outside. I used some of them. This was full. They were pretty dry on top, but I see they're still fairly moist. So this isn't a very large area, and I think that will be okay. Hopefully I'm not crushing anybody. I guess I wasn't being very... So let's go ahead. And like I said, these are muddy, I know. And whatever worms, there aren't many worms in here, so I'm not worried about, whoever, they're just going to go out in the garden. It's not going to be bad for them. Probably better for them, actually. Okay. So yeah, you see how muddy they are? Like, I can form stuff with it. Yeah. Very muddy. So, not fun. But, again, it's not the end of the world. Especially with how I do things. They'll dry out. And if I I mean, I might use them for worm tea, as in I'll put them in a little sack, a little mesh bag, and put them in water to feed the garden. And that'll be fine if it's still muddy. It's not going to hurt anything if you use muddy castings. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see why. Okay, this is about to fall over. I don't see why it would hurt anything to use wet castings, overly wet castings. I mean, in fact, that would be a good reason if you need to use castings, but they're too wet. You could still, I think, you know, worm pros, let me know. Is there anything wrong with using overly moist, overly wet castings in worm tea? Because my answer is no. Okay. Cool. Picked a couple of worms out of there. Again, it's not going to hurt them to go out in the garden. When I have a big population, I don't worry too much about who goes out with the castings. But over here, I don't want to sacrifice too many. So, and it is interesting. I think I've found at least a half dozen or so worms in the old castings. And you may have heard me mention in previous videos, if you've been around, that this is what I do when I harvest. I harvest half the bin, leaving behind established material. Okay, so quick mention. I'm not surprised that I just found worms, because I just sort of shaved off into the newer material. I was going to put this in the bucket, but I think actually I'll leave it. Nice to see all those worms. Okay, so if you're new here, how I harvest is this is less than half, but I try to harvest half of the bin and add new material. I take out the castings, add the new material, and then I will typically still feed in the old material, or lately it's like I don't know what my method is, and lately I've also put some food in the new material and food in the old material. Either way, I give the new material a chance to be inoculated, essentially, with the bacteria and microbes that are already in the bin. And then maybe 2 to 3 weeks later, I start looking at harvesting the other half. So in a 6-week process, ideally 4 to 6 weeks, I've harvested the whole bin. Now this side has already been harvested, so we're going to add the new stuff. I could mix it all together now, and just let the new stuff be with the old stuff, but this isn't. Anyways, I've actually shredded paper again, yay, because for the longest I've been just tearing up paper. But let me go ahead and I added it to water, so they're already moist. The stuff on top, because I kind of crammed the bucket, a small bucket, is still kind of dry. But yeah, all right, hold up. I don't know about you other worm farmers, but I find it exciting to add new material and to get new bins started. Now, I didn't bother squeegeeing any of this off, nor do I think it's necessary. I'm just kind of loosening it up. So, this is awesome. This is exciting to me. I don't always, but in the last month, the last couple of times I've harvested, I've kind of sort of mixed it around, stirred up stuff from the bottom. Yeah, and I can see that this brought in water, that it's wet at the bottom, which is fine. Because being that this is brand new material, I'm not counting that so much. as, oh, I've got standing water. No, that's, if there's standing water a week from now at the next feeding, then we got something to talk about. But right now, no, I don't care. I just put in new material. We're about to feed. It's not going to hurt if there's some wet. There's some water at the bottom for short periods of time. Okay, so now we have a completely harvested bin. And I'm not going to like stir them all in together this time. But I can. No, I'm going to let this side, you know, sort of, it's kind of like bringing in a new pet, new animal, or you want to quarantine it. This is not, you know, being right next to it's not quarantine, but you get what I'm saying. So I probably should have harvested that. Okay, here we have, I don't know if you can see, that's a clitellum. That bulb right there, bulge. I believe you would call that a reproductive organ. That's a great sign. So I think we may have found one last time too. So we know that we still have at least one breeding individual. And this is the castings that they're working their way through this stuff. I could have harvested that. Probably should have a week or two ago. But not a big deal. All right. Now let's work into the old material and see how things are looking. See what, yeah, they're breaking this stuff down fast. That's the one, that'll be the one disadvantage, is I know that there's always at least a couple of weeks in between me harvesting the sides. But in the last year, there's been way more time, especially with this bin, way more time in between the harvesting the sides. It's not the end of the world at all. I would just rather have a length of time where the bin can sort of be all mixed together, because then I can feed in corners, as I know worm farmers have done or do, or you can feed in the middle. You know, it's just, I would just like that. Not that this is anywhere near being ready to harvest, but you see that it's more, it's like 50-50 castings and paper. But okay, so the worms I'm seeing are looking good. Looking healthy. Very happy to see that. Yay. I'm not noticing any cocoons or adults. I think this is a blue worm. So I discovered a blue worm in the red wiggler bin that made me say, okay, I know they migrate. Worms migrate. I don't have them ever migrate to where it's a mass die-off, as in there's dead worms all over the place. So at this point, it is safe to assume, like I've kind of figured that there's going to be migration. So it's safe probably to just call all of these bins mixed worm bins. I love what I said in my last video. I love what Hannah's Worms, she gave her bins names. And I feel like I wish I had been that smart to do that. Well, then again, this did used to be just European Nightcrawlers. And then I did have just red wigglers, and then the other two bins. So they've evolved and changed into what they are. So I guess this will be mixed worm bin number 4. Not a big deal. And, you know, yeah, I understand that makes it difficult to know, is the population simply improving, like I was saying with the red wigglers in my, last night for me, is that is the population improving because the conditions are better, or are the neighbors migrating in? In either case, it's a good sign, because if neighboring worms are moving over here, then there must be something that's going right. Yeah, I'm really happy with how things are looking. We've got good numbers. Yeah, really good. This is really encouraging. I've not yet reached the feeding zone, I believe. See? Oh, but look at this. And they are healthy. They are beautiful. Come on. Tell me you don't also feel like this is excellent. Great. So great. Wow. Okay. So again, it's been 11 days. Yeah, wow. I am definitely no longer worried about this bin. Not at all. And I think whatever I fed in here last time. Yeah, see, that is a blue worm right there. Beautiful, right? Look at that color. Gorgeous. Looks like this bin is finally breaking down the Brussels sprouts. Whatever I fed last time, this bin is done with. I think it was freezer burned, frozen thawed veggies. Yeah, I don't see any other than a tomato skin and a couple of the Brussels sprouts that have been in here for like a month. Or several Brussels sprouts, but still they're clearly a long-term food item. So, all right. This bin is looking great. They are so ready for a feeding. Gosh, I just can't help but want to give them a big feeding at that. I've got a bunch of food scraps for them. Now, it's not as important that I make sure I put all the old stuff over. No, I'm not going to mix it all in, because still the new stuff needs to be inoculated. But it's fine if it's sitting on top. So I think maybe last time I did feed actually in the middle as well, come to think of it. That's what we're going to do again, because it's not in the new material, but it's next to it. I'm not going to add any dry mix, because I'll do that when next week. Next week, I expect to see worms in the new material. Let me know if you disagree. I expect to see worms in there, and then I will feed in there. For now, I'm going to feed in the middle. I'm going to add some new material, food, and then old material. Time out. Okay, so some of the new material that I put underneath the food was kind of dry, but that's totally okay. I've got some, these are older, frozen but thawing. I've had them out for maybe an hour, hoping they'd thaw a little bit faster. Tomatoes. These are actually some weeds. Beans that were moldy. A cucumber that's going bad, or that is bad. Look at yeah. So that's what we got there. Actually, I think since they're frozen, I'll add a little bit more. Of new material. That should be a really good feeding for this bin. What do you think? Those are rather large tomatoes. Here's one. There's at least, I'd say, the equivalent of 2 more of these, maybe 3. A pickling cucumber, some beans, some weeds. I think that'll be gone in, if I'm in here in 7 days, I think there will be remnants. Tomato skins don't count, okay? If it's just the skin, it doesn't count. That's actually weed seeds. I don't want that in there. Yeah, so I think there will be remnants in maybe a little bit more than remnants in 7 days, but in anything more than 7 days, I think that'll be gone. All right. Let's put everybody back over the top. And boom. Great feeding, great check-in on the European Nightcrawler, now deemed mixed worm bin number 4. Mixed worm bin number 4. I think it's looking great. So the questions for next week are, do you believe that they will have moved into, not all of them, because this stuff is still fairly new. So the question is, do you think that some worms will have migrated into the new material? So remember, there's kind of casted right into the new material, brand new, shredded, water-soaked paper, newspaper, basically. And how much food do you think will be left? And go ahead, it's fair to say, well, if it's 7 days you look in here, then I think there's going to be, 80% of it gone. If you come back in 10 days, then it'll be gone. In 7 days, yeah, I think there will be remnants. I'd say 80%. I think 80% will be gone. In 9 or 10 days, I think it'll all be mostly gone. So that's it for the once called European Nightcrawler bin, now the mixed worm bin number 4. This bin has been harvested, and yeah, cool. The castings were wet. We got about a gallon or so out of the bin, and that's that. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your interest. Be safe, be well. Bye for now.